Hello, my name is Susana Aguilar. Today is February 11th and this is my video over the movements of the synovial joints. So the first two movements are called flexion and extension. Flexion is a movement that decreases a joint angle, usually in the sagittal plane, and extension is a movement that straightens a joint and generally returns a body part to the zero position. So an example of that would be if you have your arm like this. A flexion would be bringing it close to your face. An extension would be extending your arm out flat. So the next two are abduction and adduction. Abduction is a movement of a body part in the frontal plane away from the midline of the body, and adduction is a movement in the frontal plane back towards the midline of the body. So an example would be is if I have my hands next to me, this is my midline. Abduction would be to move my arms up and away from the midline of my body. Adduction would be to move my arms back down towards the midline of my body. These next two movements are called protraction and retraction. So protraction is the anterior movement of a body part in the transverse plane, and then retraction is the posterior movement, so just the opposite of that. So let's say an example would be if we were to hold our arms out and then we push something forward, this part of our shoulder moves forward. That is protraction. And then retraction is when you go back to normal position. The next one is circumduction. That is one end of an appendage remains fairly stationary while the other end makes a circular motion. So an example of that movement would be if I held my hand like this and I would have it completely still and just move my thumb like this. The next movement is a rotation, which is a movement in which a bone spins on its longitudinal axis. So, for example, we can hold our hand like this, and then when we move it inwards like this, it's rotating inwards, and that is called medial internal rotation. When you rotate it out, it's called lateral external rotation. So, medial, external, in and out. The next two are supination and pronation. Supination is a movement that turns the palm to face anteriorly or upward in an anatomical position. The forearm is supinated and the radius is parallel to the ulna. Pronation is the opposite movement, causing the palm to face posteriorly or downward and the radius to the ulna forms an X. So for example, if I were to put my arm out like this, this is supination, and then because my palm is facing upward and the radius is parallel to the ulna, and then when I move my palm down, that is pronation, and then the radius forms an X with the ulna on the other side. The last two are dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Dorsiflexion is the movement in which the toes are elevated, and the plantar flexion is the movement of the foot, so toes point downward. So this is an example of that movement. So dorsiflexion would be if I point my toes upward, and then plantar flexion would be if I point my toes downward. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my video.